figure out how can we find a way to close the gap and to bridge the gap between linguistics on one hand, cognition on the other hand. How can we understand language in social interaction? That would be the bottom line of my dissertation. Now let me just move ahead here to review the slides that I have today in my PhD dissertation. And the first slide I will have is cognition and cognitive linguistics. As you can see, that cognition, simply and briefly, it means this is the process of how can we generate different ideas in different contexts. And then cognitive linguistics, this is a combination between cognition on one hand and language on the other hand. How can we find a way to combine between both of them based on three important pillars: language, mind, and past experience. Now the second point here I have is discourse and the critical discourse. When I talk about discourse, we have a huge number of definitions about discourse. We have Lum Kolka 1997 talking about that this is the way of how can we find a relationship between explicit meaning and implicit meaning. We have Deborah Scheffler, we have Deborah Tannen talking about that this is the study of the meaning in relation to context. Even 5 years ago in this place, Shabana 2006 talked about that this is the study of the implicit meaning in relation to the context. And I would say this, we have a lot of definitions about discourse. Simply, I would say that this is the process of communication. This is the process of how can we get the meaning, the explicit meaning and implicit meaning in two different ways. Now here, the third part I have is the relationship between cognitive linguistics and the critical discourse analysis. Cognitive linguistics, again, is concerned about the mental representation that we have in our memories. And the critical discourse analysis is concerned deeply about the text and talk from a critical view. But when we make it a kind of communicative interaction, we use verbal language or we use non-verbal language, whatever the language we use, but at the end we are using a communicative approach. But this approach is based on an idea in our memories. And an idea, an imagination, this is the point of cognition. How can we reach this point and connect that with the language? Now, I have here also some basic points about the cognitive strategies that I have. So we talked about the basic notions that I have in my dissertation. Now the mental models, here I'm talking about social schema and image schema, and between both of them we have the memory. Social schema, or social schema, this is mental representation stored in our memories based on our past experience. And then image schema, this is an imagination coming from our mind to imagine certain situation, and based on such an imagination we can just make our interactions linguistically. And both of them, the social schema and the image schema, both of them are stored in our memories. Whether we have actually generally three important types of memories. We have the short-term memory, we have working or intermediate memories, and we have long-term memories. All of them are cooperating together, working in a harmonized way to produce linguistic interaction. Now we have also cognitive strategies. The first strategy that we have is rehearsal, which means that in our daily interactions, we are just, in every interaction we have, we are updating information and we are also refreshing our information. In that case, this process and this strategy is called rehearsal. And then encoding, which means how can we activate the mental representations. And then the third one, elaboration, which means how can we add new information to the old one. How can we make the process of updating in our memory. This is what it is called elaboration. And the last one is called the retrieval, which means how can we get the information out of our memories by using our organ-speech system to produce linguistic entities. Now here I'm just trying to raise and to highlight on some issues that I have, objectives of my research. Number one, what are the main characteristics of the cognitive models in political discourse? The second point is, what is the form of ideological discourse in the racist society? And the third one, what are the linguistic tools used by Barack Obama and Martin Luther King, whether on the lexical level or on the syntactic level or the pragmatic level? Here we have the cognitive strategies. When I talk about cognitive strategies, I'm talking about, as I mentioned before, social schemas, anchoring, objectification, persuasion. Well, we discussed before social schemas, and now anchoring, which means how can we add new information to the old one? Objectification, how can we change our complex ideas into simple ideas, clear ideas, and concrete images in our minds and vigorous concepts. And then persuasion, probably persuasion could be one of the most crucial points we have in any kind of discourse studies. In persuasion, we are handling the ideological concept, the cognitive concept, the communicative way. So, and in persuasion also we have something which is called shaping, strengthening, changing. As all of us know that persuasion is based on three important elements: emotions, credibility, the credibility of the speaker, and the logic and facts. But now we would like to know what is the effect of persuasion when it comes to our daily interactions. Persuasion really can work out in shaping our minds. It can also strengthen some ideas that we have, and it can also change some concepts that we have in our minds. Then here we started by talking about imagination or ideas. And these ideas should have a framework to be structured. And the key point here that can work in this way is ideology, which can be defined like a number of values, ideas, and notions that can determine the attitude of certain people in certain communities. I guess that Barack Obama and Martin Luther King both of them share the same ideological strategies to use a unification strategy, universalization strategy, and legitimation strategy. And here we have the third level, the linguistic strategies, linguistic devices. I talked about metaphors and I talked about speech acts and implicitness. And when it comes to implicitness, I would say that this is one of the most critical points that we will have still in further studies when it comes to discursive analyses. The process for comprehending cognitive discourse. I would say that we have two basic concepts. The first one is iconicity, and the second one is implicitness. Iconicity means how can we just make comparative approaches between what we had before in the past and what we have today and what we will have in the future. And then implicitness. Implicitness could be considered like one of the most strategic elements that most writers and readers who are concerned in discourse studies, they do care about that. Implicitness does have two important elements. Number one, this is the features of implicitness. It's risky and it's costly. It's risky because I can use an implicit message and then the listener may not be able to understand what I want to say exactly. So he doesn't know exactly what is the intended message from the speaker. And the second one, it's costly because it takes a long time from the speaker to produce such implicit message, and it takes a longer time from the hearer or the listener to understand what he wants to say, the speaker exactly. Here I'm moving now to the classification of my dissertation. I'm talking about speeches. Obama's speeches actually are classified into two important elements: pre-inauguration, before taking the office in 2008, and the second one, post-inauguration. What kind of change do we have in Obama's discourse? And then they are sub-classified into local topics, international topics. Then the second one, Martin Luther King's speeches, are also classified by pre-Nobel Prize and post-Nobel Prize. I have chosen Nobel Prize time as a critical time in King's discourse because Martin Luther King changed in his way of language. He changed in his way of discourse. He changed in his way also of interaction. He changed it rather than to be a political leader searching for making a change in his society. Some people describe him to be a statesman, to be a very political person, and that is something very common. Happened before for the founder of the African-American rhetoric style, Frederick Douglass. It happened with Martin Luther King, and nowadays we can witness that in Obama's speeches. He also changed since he came last time here in Cairo a few years ago. The discursive devices that I have here, Martin Luther King and Obama, I would like just to be brief as much as I can. I have here four important elements. Condensation, which means how can we focus on the basic concepts, the main ideas in our discourse. Combination, which means how can we add new ideas to the old ones. Opposition or contrast, how can we put two different ideas in our text to clarify that to the audience. And the last one is domestication, how can we make our speeches to be very familiar to the audience. Now I'm just coming to the end. Thank you so much for giving me your attention to listen to me, and I'll be very glad to receive your comments and your questions. Thank you once again. Thank you. Thank you so much.